Guten Tag, APUSH. We have a new video today. It's the bee's knees by the big cheese himself, Mr. Linegar. Let's make history today as we jaw over Unit 7, Day 11. But first, let's do our daily punishment. What did the ranch say when somebody opened the refrigerator? Hey, close the door. I'm dressing. Your key terms for today are the Reagan New Deal, Ronald Reagan, the moral majority, the Southern strategy, supply-side economics, also known as Reaganomics, the Tax Code Reform Act of 1986, the Strategic Defense Initiatives, also known as the Star Wars program, personal diplomacy, the Reagan Doctrine, the Iran-Contra scandal, Oliver North, HIV/AIDS, Sandra Day O'Connor, the Reykjavik Summit, the Washington Summit, and the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty, the INF Treaty. We're going to go over the reasons for Ronald Reagan's election and how he changed the realignment in American politics and how he changed the Republican Party specifically. The Republican Party would become much more conservative. We'll talk about his domestic policy. We'll talk about his war with the communist Russia and his foreign policy adventures in periphery areas like Iran-Contra. All right. So by 1968, you started to see political realignment with the Southern strategy. That's how the Republicans started focusing on more issues that the South like affirmative action, prayer in school, gays, busing. They were seen as more conservative, anti-communist, and pro-business, and you're seeing the South become more and more Republican. The Republicans say that you need to back off on desegregation, you need to focus on law and order, defending the silent majority, defending family values, fight against the ERA. Nixon used Spiro Agnew to attack liberalism, and he attacked the liberal media and intellectuals. Here's one of Reagan's campaign stops. Some of the discontent in the 1970s was this. The 1970s, there was huge economic stress with stagflation. Inflation will hurt the middle class. There was two major oil crises. It's going to hit the automobile and suburban culture hard, and as fuel is more and more expensive. Stagflation was unemployment and inflation went up together while wages fell, which is very unusual, as I mentioned before. You see escalating property taxes for homeowners. This is going to lead to a tax protest. So even liberal states like California are going to pass propositions that try to lower the property taxes. There's going to be a new Christian right. Before this time, the fundamentalist evangelical Christians had never really gotten involved in politics. Jimmy Carter was one of the first presidents in modern times that brought up his evangelical faith to win the election. But now you're going to see some Christian right people. They're going to see what the Democratic Party believes in, like gay rights. They're against affirmative action. They're against the family values. They're for the ERA. And you're going to see some Christian fundamentalists start to form organizations to support the Republican Party. One of the main groups formed was led by Jerry Falwell, and it's called the Moral Majority. This was conservative Christian groups, and it's going to give a lot of funding, and it's going to try to get a lot of people to vote for the Republicans. It's like how unions are a base of support for Democrats. The Christian right was also upset because of things like school prayer. School prayer was made illegal by the Supreme Court and Engel v. Vattel. This is a reaction against social reform, affirmative action, school prayer. The Sun Belt is going to have more clout, the South and West. It's more religious and more traditional and more Republican. The Rust Belt is like Ohio, Indiana, Wisconsin, Michigan. That's the old industrial New Deal area. It's the Union heartland, and it's going through deindustrialization. It's losing people, and it's really losing political power. At this time, there were foreign policy debacles, which kind of got blamed on the party in power, which right now is the Democrats. Vietnam, the Iranian hostage crisis. This will all hurt liberals. Here's Jerry Falwell and the Moral Majority. So let's talk about who my boy Ronald Reagan was. Ronald Reagan was a B-movie actor. He never played in big movies. He never won an Oscar or anything, but he was in a lot of little movies. Bedtime for Bonzo. After he ended his acting career, he was a pitchman for General Electric. He was a one-time liberal who's going to turn friendly during the McCarthy era and is going to offer testimony for HUAC against the communists. He's going to be elected governor of California from 65 to 74. When the colleges have the free speech movement, he's going to send in the army, and he's going to be very forceful against the free speech people. He will seek the presidency in 1976. He will not win it, but he does really well of almost taking the Republican nomination. He's known as the great communicator. He was very eloquent, a great communicator. Probably like him and President Obama are some of the greatest communicators in the modern times. He's also known as the Teflon Man because people thought he was always sincere. So even if bad things happened during his presidency, nothing stuck on him, like Teflon. Here's his agenda. This is called the Reagan New Deal. He wants to do supply-side economics. Supply-side economics is also called Reaganomics. This is where you want to decrease taxes, which means there'll be less revenue. And then with the decreasing of the taxes, people that believed in supply-side economics believed that since there was less taxes for businesses, businesses will spend more money, which will cause the economy to increase. This was a novel idea. Most people did not believe this at the time. Most people thought that when you cut taxes, there's less money, so you now need to cut governmental programs to keep the budget balanced. Reagan believed that by cutting taxes, it would cause the economy to go up enough that you could still increase programs. He didn't want entitlement programs. He wanted to increase the military budget because he wanted to be strong against the Soviet Union. George Bush, who ran against Reagan, is going to call this voodoo economics because it makes no sense. But this is his big thing, and he will cut taxes pretty heavily as president, mostly for the rich, the upper classes, and the business. He will want to do major cuts in entitlement programs. He wants to cut social welfare. He wants to cut aspects of the Great Society. He wants to cut Social Security, low-key. He won't get a lot of these things. He'll cut some stuff, but he won't be able to cut a lot of the stuff because the Democrats still have Congress. Here's Ronald Reagan as an actor. So here's what Reagan did. He's going to deregulate the economy. The airlines industry and television, telephone systems, and public utilities were controlled by the government. He's going to deregulate them, so now they're going to be controlled by private industries. In 1981, the air traffic controllers, the people that tell the airplanes where to land, are going to go on strike. They are actually federal employees, and it is illegal for governmental employees to strike. Reagan's going to give them like a one-day warning, then he's going to fire 11,359 air traffic controllers in 1981. He's then going to hire people and have them trained really fast. It was actually probably pretty dangerous, but there was no plane crashes. Reagan's environmental reforms are trying to cut the EPA and give business more power and less environmental regulation. He's going to have the civil rights in the department and the Justice Department oppose busing. He's going to oppose affirmative action. He said affirmative action was reverse racism. He wanted to get rid of Social Security, but that will not pass. One of the things that will pass for him is the Tax Code Reform Act of 1986. The Tax Code Reform Act is going to decrease the tax brackets. It's going to make it simplified. It's going to increase earner income tax credits and standard deduction. It was okay. I mean, it's fine. I like it. It's going to be supported by the Democrats and the Republicans. Some of the more liberal Democrats say it favors the rich. Reagan is going to fight against extending the Civil Rights Act because he said African Americans now have full equality, but Congress will pass it anyway. He's going to veto Medical and Family Leave Act repeatedly. I guess women don't need medical and family leave. He's going to attempt to restrict abortion access to welfare assistance. He's going to try to restrict abortion to women in the military and in foreign aid programs. That's the Mexico rule because he was anti-abortion. Let's talk about his foreign policy now. This is one of the big things Reagan is known for. He wants to restore American prestige internationally by building up American defense and by taking a tough line against the Soviets. He's going to do massive weapon buildup, spend a lot more money on defense while cutting taxes, which is actually going to cause a national deficit to heavily increase. His supply-side economics does not work. He's going to place missiles in Western Europe, and he's going to do something called the Strategic Defense Initiative, also called the Star Wars program. The Star Wars program was right here, where he wanted to build like a kind of like missile in space that would be able to fire lasers and shoot down nuclear bombs before they hit America. Congress is going to spend over $30 billion on this between 1983 to 1993. It was only hypothetical. They actually never built it, and Bill Clinton will finally end it. It never worked. Although it is actually possible, but we just have not got it to work. He's going to call Russia the evil empire. He's going to escalate tensions with his rhetoric. He goes to Berlin, and he says, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall." In 1985, Gorbachev is the new communist leader of Russia. Gorbachev was a reformer. Gorbachev is going to do something called perestroika, which allows for some capitalism in Russia, and he does glasnost, which allows for freedom of speech. Gorbachev wants to improve relationships with America, so Reagan and Gorbachev are going to meet in a couple conferences. This is called personal diplomacy. Reagan really relied on his charm. He thought that if he just had a one-on-one meeting with Gorbachev, they could straighten out all the problems in the world. When he meets with Gorbachev, they will have a couple summits. They'll have the Reykjavik summit and the Washington summit. And the end result of those two summits is America will eventually sign the INF treaty, the Intermediate Range Nuclear Force Treaty. The INF treaty is going to ban land-based and cruise-based missiles and cruise and missile launchers with ranges of 310 to 620 miles. So mid-range missiles, it's going to ban. Reagan thought this was great. It was safe for the world. He thought Gorbachev was not like part of the evil empire. He thought Russia was becoming more democratic. Reagan will refuse to get rid of the SDI. He said that people that like Ronald Reagan, one of the things they argue is they say that communist Russia is going to collapse in 1991. And one of the reasons communist Russia collapses is because their economy falls. Gorbachev does try to fix this by allowing capitalism in Russia, but it's too little too late. When Reagan did the Star Wars program, Russia is going to start to spend more and more money on the military, and it kind of bankrupts them. So people that really like Ronald Reagan, they say that by him doing the SDI, even if it was a trash program, he's kind of responsible for the communist government collapsing. It's super debatable. Here's the SDI. So the Reagan Doctrine said that America will provide covert and overt aid to anti-communist guerrillas and guerrilla leaders who are trying to resist communist rebellions. He wanted to roll back Soviet and pro-communist governments in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. So we'll give money to communist rebel leaders. That's the Reagan Doctrine. And Central America, Reagan is going to do the bad neighbor policy. We'll get much more involved in Central America. We're going to get involved in Nicaragua and Guatemala. America will invade Grenada. Reagan will send soldiers into Grenada. He said he did this to protect American citizens and prevent the island from being used as a base for the Soviet Union in their act of aggression. At the time, it was the first American military operation since the Vietnam War. Reagan will continue to give more weapons and training to the Afghanistan rebels that are fighting against the communist Russia in Afghanistan. The big scandal for Ronald Reagan is the Iran-Contra affair. And the Iran-Contra affair is a little bit confusing, so let me explain it to you. Here's what the Iran-Contra affair was. Congress explicitly said that Reagan could not give money to the anti-communist rebels in Nicaragua. In Nicaragua, there was a civil war going on between the Sandinistas, who were the communist-backed group, and the Contras, who were the American Democratic-backed group. Congress specifically said you cannot use funding to give money to the Contras. What's going to happen is some of Reagan's aides are going to give weapons to Iran. And remember, America doesn't like Iran because they held our people hostage. He gave weapons to Iran. In return, they gave America money and then they're going to illegally give that money to the Contras in Nicaragua. They're going to funnel it illegally. This did violate the law. Reagan claimed to not know anything about this. This will come out eventually. Reagan's Secretary of Defense is going to be convicted of a crime. I think a CIA person is also. Reagan will pardon them. But even though Reagan loses popularity over this, for some reason it doesn't stick to him. He says that he didn't know about it, and people believe him. He's just a nice, genial guy. The major American person that took the fall for Reagan is going to be the commander, like the person that was really in charge of the whole Iran-Contra covert action, Oliver North. And he actually goes to jail. This is Reagan meeting with the Afghani leaders. Here's Oliver North before Congress. So let's talk about Ronald Reagan's presidency in general. There will be a major recession in 1981 to 1983, but it will go away eventually. There'll be a huge leap in concentration of the wealthy. There'll be an increase in homelessness and poverty. One of Reagan's famous quotes when he says there's no poor people in America. There's going to be huge deficits. It goes from $70 billion to $270 billion. But Reagan finally does kill inflation. Inflation dies. And inflation doesn't really start to exist again until like 2022, this year. Like, we have not had inflation for like almost 40 years. You're going to have an increase in the power base of the southern and western states in national politics. The Republican Party will become the dominant political party of the next 25 years. The Christian right, the moral majority, is going to become a big part of the Republican Party, and they're going to focus on social issues like abortion, gay rights, and stuff like that. The Republicans will start to be much more like conservative and not moderate. Deregulation, pro-business, pro-tax cut. You will see inequality. You're going to have an increased burden on state and local governmental agencies to provide social welfare. Reagan will nominate the first woman Supreme Court Justice, Sandra Day O'Connor, which is good. She was actually a moderate. She retired in the 2000s. HIV/AIDS will become an epidemic in the late 70s and 80s. It started in San Francisco, but then is going to come to America. Reagan's going to not take it seriously at first. Some of his aides thought like it was a moral thing because it could be contacted through sexual transmission, so they don't want to do anything about it, just be abstinent. Eventually, by 1986, after it already had started to really spread, he will start speaking out against HIV/AIDS, and there'll start being more funding to try to find like cocktails and ways to deal with AIDS. And that's the presidency of Ronald Reagan. For a lot of Republicans, he's still considered one of the greatest presidents in American history. He's aight. Not really, He's okay. Whatever. All right, kiddos, that's all I have for you for today. Until next time, deuces. Deuces, deuces.